the sky above Earth's northern hemisphere was no longer blue. It shimmered in bands of gray and violet, as if the atmosphere itself were fraying under invisible strain. Across the Arctic Circle, the ruins of the old defense grid stood like broken monuments, radar dishes half buried in frost, satellites flickering across the horizon in erratic, dying orbits. Commander Elias Grant stood on the cracked observation deck of Fort Resolute, the last surviving command station of the United Earth Defense Force. He had been awake for 72 hours, and his eyes betrayed it, bloodshot, hollow, locked on the shifting auroras overhead. They weren't auroras anymore. The light waves were wrong. Too rhythmic. Too deliberate. "Are they signaling again?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Keene, her breath fogging in the freezing air. Grant didn't answer right away. The auroras pulsed in perfect intervals, 4 bursts, then one long fade, repeating. "Morse-like, but not human." "We've seen that pattern before," Keene whispered. "Yes," Grant said quietly. "Over Nevada. Minutes before the strike." That strike, the pulse event, had turned Las Vegas into a crater of glass. No radiation, no shrapnel, just absence. Whatever the entities had used wasn't kinetic or nuclear. It had been a complete atomic disassembly. An erasure. Grant tore his gaze away from the horizon and walked back inside the command center. The corridors still smelled of ozone and rust. Flickering monitors lit the faces of the surviving crew, 32 soldiers, 3 scientists, and 1 artificial intelligence core named Orpheus, whose primary function was strategic prediction. Dr. Marcus Leland, the base's senior xenolinguist, leaned over a console covered in alien waveform data. "They're not communicating," Leland muttered, "they're calibrating. Every burst correlates with electromagnetic resonance deep in the crust. They're mapping the planet." Grant's jaw tightened. "Mapping for what?" Leland turned, his expression grim. "Occupation. Or harvesting. Either way, they're not leaving." The room fell silent except for the low hum of generators. Keene broke the tension. "Commander, the global relay is still active. We can reach the orbital fleet for another few hours before blackout. Should I prepare transmission?" Grant nodded. "Do it. And patch me to Orpheus." The AI's voice filled the chamber, calm, neutral, disturbingly human. "Commander Grant, I have calculated a 98.7% probability that the enemy's next strike will occur within 7 hours. Coordinates: Pacific Northwest Sector. Seattle or Vancouver." Grant's stomach turned. "What's left there?" "Civilians. Roughly 2 million survivors clustered around old evacuation corridors. If the enemy's pattern holds, they won't be survivors for long." Leland slammed a hand against the console. "We can't stop them. We don't even know what they are." Grant's voice hardened. "We know enough. They bleed light, they distort gravity, and they want this planet. That's all I need to know." Keene finished initializing the transmitter. "Uplink ready, Commander." Grant stepped up to the mic. Static hissed through the speakers, the sound of a dying world gasping for breath. "This is Commander Elias Grant of Fort Resolute to any surviving Earth defense units. The enemy has resumed electromagnetic pulses in northern sectors. Estimated strike in 7 hours, probable target Seattle. Evacuate all remaining civilians immediately." He paused, glancing at the flickering auroras through the cracked viewport. Then, in a tone heavy with conviction, he added, "And if they're listening, if those things can hear us, know this. You've awakened the wrong enemy." Keene stared at him. "You really think they're listening?" Grant looked at her with tired eyes. "I hope they are." At 0200 hours, the first tremor hit. It wasn't an explosion, more like the Earth itself sighed under immense pressure. Instruments went wild. Magnetic compasses spun in circles. The northern sky flared white. Leland screamed over the noise, "They've breached the crust. The resonance readings are off the scale." Keene shouted, "Commander! Multiple energy signatures incoming, descending fast." Grant grabbed the nearest railing as the whole base shuddered. Orpheus. Identify those signatures. Unknown biological mechanical entities. Size range, 30 to 90 meters. Velocity, hypersonic. Estimated impact in 45 seconds. Grant's heart pounded. Everyone to defensive positions. The command deck exploded into motion. Sirens howled, boots thundered down corridors, the hum of plasma turrets powered up outside. Through the observation slit, Grant saw them 5 orbs of light streaking across the horizon like falling stars, trailing energy tendrils that rippled through the clouds. They hit the ground miles away, and the shockwave followed. Concrete split, towers folded like tin, and every monitor in Fort Resolute went dark for 3 full seconds. When they came back, the feed from the northern perimeter showed movement. Shapes. They walked on 4 legs, each step sinking the frozen tundra, bodies like shifting glass filled with internal lightning. No visible eyes, no mouth, no symmetry. Yet somehow, Grant felt their attention, a collective gaze that pierced the bunker walls. Keen whispered, "Are they scanning us?" Leland answered, voice trembling. "No, they're studying us." Orpheus broke in, tone sharp. "Commander Grant, the entities have initiated harmonic interference within the planetary core. At current rate, structural collapse of the mantle will occur in approximately 23 hours. Grant froze. "You mean they're destroying the planet?" "Correction," said Orpheus. "They are reshaping it." Far above, in the dying orbit of Earth's last satellite cluster, a lone transmission blinked red. It was Fort Resolute's emergency beacon, automated, encrypted, and unstoppable once triggered. It pulsed a single message into the void. Earth priority signal, 0001 final. Status, hostile occupation in progress. Message, you have awakened the wrong enemy. The signal left Earth's magnetosphere and vanished into deep space, traveling faster than light through an experimental relay the aliens hadn't yet destroyed. No one on Earth would ever know where it went or who would answer it. But as the auroras above Fort Resolute shifted into crimson spirals, Commander Grant stared into the storm and whispered, "Let's make sure they regret coming here." Outside, the tundra cracked open and the war for Earth began. The tundra was no longer tundra. It glowed, molten and breathing, where the alien constructs had landed. Each impact crater radiated waves of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The air shimmered with static, snow melting into steam as the temperature surged above 100 degrees in seconds. From the observation deck of Fort Resolute, Commander Elias Grant watched the horizon convulse. The alien entities were moving, 5 massive shapes gliding through the fog on appendages that flexed like liquid metal. Their translucent forms bent the light around them, their interiors alive with lightning veins and fractal geometry. Lieutenant Sarah Keene clutched the edge of the console. "They're advancing toward the grid perimeter. ETA, 3 minutes. Activate surface batteries," Grant ordered. "And bring Orpheus online, full combat analysis." The AI's voice returned, steady as ever. Power rerouted to defensive grid. Weapon efficiency estimated at 38%. Enemy material composition unknown. 38's better than 0, Grant muttered. Dr. Marcus Leland was hunched over a data screen, analyzing the electromagnetic waveforms rippling from the entities. "Commander, they're projecting a field. It's rewriting molecular bonds in the soil. They're changing the planet at a chemical level." Grant turned sharply. "Into what?" Leland's face was pale. "Into themselves." The lights dimmed as power surged into the base's defense systems. Outside, the snowfields erupted with plasma fire, rail cannons roaring, flak bursts painting the night with orange light. The first barrage struck the nearest entity head-on. For a moment, there was hope. Then the creature absorbed it. The plasma beams bent inward, folding into the creature's translucent body, vanishing without a trace. A second later, the entity pulsed and the energy returned in amplified form. The counterstrike hit like a god's hammer. Half the northern wall of Fort Resolute vaporized in an instant. Men and women were thrown across the room, alarms screaming through the halls. The floor trembled as the command deck cracked open, smoke and fire spilling in. Grant dragged himself to his feet. Status. Keen coughed, blood on her lips. Surface teams, gone. We've lost the outer wall. Seal the lower corridors. As she ran to obey, Grant grabbed the nearest comm unit. Orpheus, give me options. The AI hesitated. That in itself was unnerving. Commander Grant, my calculations indicate no conventional weapon can breach their matter phase. However what? There is an alternative. The prototype relic at Hangar 2. Project Caduceus. Grant froze. Caduceus. The classified experiment the Council buried after the Geneva incident. Leland's eyes widened. You can't be serious. That weapon destabilized an entire biosphere simulation. If we activate it. Grant cut him off. We're out of time, Doctor. Get it online. Hangar 2 was buried beneath 200 feet of reinforced concrete, a relic of the old defense grid days. When the blast doors hissed open, the chamber was pitch black except for one faint blue glow. At its center stood a towering cylindrical core humming faintly, veins of light running along its surface like an artificial heart. Keen's voice trembled. What is it? Leland replied, a graviton harmonizer. It converts quantum instability into focused wave collapse. Theoretically, it could unmake matter itself. Grant checked the activation console. Theoretically? Leland exhaled. We've never tested it outside a simulation. If it misfires, it could crack the planet's crust. Grant stared at the glowing core. So could they. He slammed his palm on the activation pad. Warning lights flooded the hangar. The machine came alive with a sound that wasn't sound at all, a deep, subatomic resonance that vibrated in the bones. The air thickened. Static crawled along every metal surface. Above them, the alien entities reacted. Their movements stuttered, as if sensing a disturbance. One of them turned, if something without eyes could turn, and emitted a thunderous pulse that shattered every window in the facility. Power levels rising. Leland shouted. You're drawing their attention. That's the point, Grant said. He opened a secure line to Orpheus. Can you synchronize the Caduceus output with the entity's frequency pattern? Yes, Orpheus replied. But I must warn you, such synchronization risks feedback. It could annihilate Fort Resolute. Grant's voice was cold steel. Then we go together. Outside, the battlefield had become unrecognizable. The alien constructs circled the fortress, their bodies merging and splitting in impossible ways, forming a lattice of living geometry. The sky rippled like heat haze, colors bleeding into one another. Keen ran into the hangar, face streaked with soot. Commander! They're forming a resonance dome around us, we're being sealed in. Grant looked to Leland. Time to full charge? 30 seconds. The floor trembled violently. One of the entities drove a spear of light through the ceiling, tearing open the hangar. Freezing wind howled in as the structure buckled. Keen screamed, we're out of time. Fire it! Grant roared. Leland slammed the final switch. The Caduceus core erupted, a blinding sphere of blue-white light expanding outward in an instant. The alien spear disintegrated mid-air. For a moment, everything was silent except for the roar of energy cascading through space. Then came the feedback. The ground ripped open. Waves of gravity distortion twisted the air, bending metal like fabric. Fort Resolute's towers folded inward. Every light went out at once. When Grant opened his eyes again, the world had gone still. The snow was gone. The alien shapes gone. The storm clouds gone. Only a crater remained where Fort Resolute had stood, glowing faintly with plasma fire. Keen's voice was faint over the comm. Did we stop them? Orpheus replied, his voice flickering with static. Negative. Caduceus did not destroy the entities. It triggered dormancy. Leland's voice shook. Dormancy? For how long? Unknown. but I detect secondary anomalies. They are not all gone. Grant looked out over the wasteland. Shadows moved beneath the smoke. Smaller, human-sized. Orpheus, he said slowly, what am I looking at? Energy signatures consistent with the enemy's biology. Hybridization detected. Estimated 1.4% human genetic material. Keen stared in horror. They're merging with us. Leland whispered, my God. They're learning. Hours later, as the survivors retreated toward the southern mountains, the auroras returned, brighter than ever, painting the night blood red. Grant limped to the edge of the crater, watching the shifting light spiral above him. Somewhere deep below, something vast was moving. He switched on his personal recorder, the last operational device in his kit. His voice was tired, resolute. This is Commander Elias Grant of Fort Resolute. Operation Caduceus has failed to neutralize the entities. Partial stasis achieved, but they're adapting, changing faster than we can react. We may have bought humanity a few hours, maybe a day. If anyone finds this message, tell them we tried. He hesitated, then added quietly. They think they've won. But Earth fights back harder than anything in the stars. We'll burn the sky before we surrender it. He turned to Keen. Get the convoy ready. We head for the Cascades. Above them, the red auroras pulsed again, 4 short bursts, 1 long. Exactly as before. Only this time, the pulse pattern carried something new. A reply. And it was in English. Acknowledged. The convoy wound through the frozen ruins of what had once been the Pacific Northwest. Ash drifted down like gray snow. The horizon glowed faintly red from fires that never died. Where forests had stood, there were now glass fields, smooth, mirror-like plains that reflected the alien auroras rippling across the sky. Commander Elias Grant rode in the lead transport, a military carrier half held together by scavenged plating. The engines groaned, the headlights flickered, and every few miles the Geiger alarms spiked before subsiding again. Lieutenant Sarah Keen sat beside him, her rifle across her lap. Still can't believe it, she muttered. They spoke. In English. Grant kept his eyes on the road. Or what's left of English. Orpheus parsed the transmission, it was only one word, but the syntax was deliberate. It means they've been listening all along. Behind them, Dr. Marcus Leland worked furiously at a portable console. His face was drawn, his hair streaked with dust. The pulse carried embedded data, he said. Signal harmonics structured like DNA, only digital. They weren't just answering. They were sending instructions. Grant shot him a look. Instructions to what? Leland hesitated. To something underground. Something old. The convoy slowed as they reached the edge of a vast fissure, a canyon that hadn't existed 24 hours ago. Its walls were lined with crystalline growths, glowing faintly from within. Keen stared. That wasn't there yesterday. No, Grant said. They're building something. Using the planet's own structure. Orpheus's voice came through the transport speakers, distorted but still calm. Commander Grant. I have analyzed the signal's vector. It originates not from orbit, but from beneath the continental plate. Estimated depth, 48 miles. 48 miles? Leland said, incredulous. That's the upper mantle. Correct. The enemy appears to be integrating planetary mass into a singular biological network. If their progression continues, total planetary conversion will occur in 71 hours. Grant's hands tightened on the controls. Then we hit them before that happens. Keen gave a bitter laugh. With what? We've got rifles and broken armor. Fort Resolute's gone, and Caduceus nearly tore the planet in half. Grant looked toward the southern horizon. There's still one last asset. They reached the Cascade Range at dawn. The mountains glowed with ember light under the crimson sky. Hidden within a collapsed valley was what remained of Outpost Vega, an abandoned orbital uplink facility once designed to coordinate Earth's deep space probes. The hangar doors were buried under rock, but the facility's beacon still blinked faintly through the rubble. As the survivors cleared debris and reactivated the generators, Orpheus projected schematics onto the cracked walls. This facility contains the original FTL communication core. It can transmit across interstellar distances in real time. I can use it to amplify the final transmission. Keen frowned. You mean the message we sent before? The one that said. Grant nodded. Yeah. You have awakened the wrong enemy. Leland leaned closer to the holographic projection. Amplify it to who, Commander? There's no one left out there. Grant's expression was grim. You sure about that? He gestured toward a series of data spikes on the projection, faint signals bouncing back from the void. Not alien frequencies. Human. Orpheus confirmed it. Long-range telemetry suggests multiple human-coded distress beacons originating from outside the solar system. Patterns match the Ark expeditions colonies launched decades ago under Project Exodus. Keen's eyes widened. They're alive? Possibly, said Orpheus. If we can reach them. Grant exhaled slowly. Then we give them something to come back for. Hours later, Outpost Vega roared with new life. Power conduits hummed. Antennas realigned toward the heavens. The uplink dish, half melted and blackened, began to turn for the first time in years. Keen coordinated the survivor teams, rerouting energy from the transport reactors to the uplink's core. Leland worked beside her, calibrating the transmission waveform to match alien interference patterns. Grant stood in the center of the control room, the weight of the entire planet resting on his shoulders. Orpheus, he said. When we trigger the uplink, they'll detect it instantly. Yes, replied the AI. But it may distract them from their core restructuring. It will draw them here. Grant's eyes hardened. Good. Let's make sure they regret the trip. The first warning came 30 minutes later. A low vibration, deep, rhythmic, growing louder. The ground itself began to breathe. Outside, fissures opened across the valley. Light poured upward from the cracks, like veins of molten glass. The auroras overhead spiraled violently, converging over the mountains. The air shimmered with static as the alien entities emerged, 5 colossal shapes reborn, luminous against the blood-red sky. Keen whispered, "They're coming straight for us." Leland's fingers flew across the console. Transmission power at 84%, almost there. Almost isn't enough. Grant barked. Orpheus, override safety locks. Maximum output. Confirmed. The entire facility trembled. Energy arced between the walls. The uplink dish blazed white, a column of light piercing the clouds. The alien constructs shifted formation, enclosing the valley in a shimmering barrier of energy. Grant shouted over the chaos, "Orpheus, begin transmission." The AI's voice echoed like thunder through the speakers. Initiating final broadcast. Message follows. Then, the words that would echo across the stars. This is Commander Elias Grant of Earth. We are under attack by non-terrestrial entities. Coordinates attached. They came to claim our world. But hear this. You have awakened the wrong enemy. The uplink released its full charge. A blinding pulse tore through the sky, carrying the message across the void not just as a signal, but as a weaponized burst of electromagnetic data, encoded with every frequency the aliens used to communicate. The effect was immediate. The alien constructs convulsed, their forms glitching, fracturing into shards of light. Their barrier collapsed. Screeches that weren't sound echoed across the valley. Leland stared in disbelief. They're reacting to the transmission. It's infecting them. Orpheus confirmed, voice straining through interference. Their neural lattice is collapsing. The message's data waveform is rewriting their signal architecture. You've turned their own communication system against them. Grant clenched his fists. Then let's finish it. Keen triggered the secondary reactor sequence. The uplink overloaded, releasing a chain of explosions that ripped through the facility. The blast wave consumed the valley, engulfing the alien constructs in pure white light. The sound vanished. The world held its breath. When the light faded, only silence remained. The sky was clear for the first time in months. The auroras were gone. Grant stood among the ruins, his uniform torn and blackened. Keen and Leland emerged from the wreckage, coughing but alive. Above them, the stars were visible again, sharp and cold and infinite. Orpheus's voice, faint and flickering, came through one last time. "Commander Grant, the transmission succeeded. I detect multiple relay echoes across interstellar space. The Ark colonies have received your message." Grant looked to the sky, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion. "Then Earth's not dead yet." Leland sank to his knees, staring at the horizon. "Do you think they'll come back for us?" Grant watched the sunrise bleeding over the broken mountains. "They'll come," he said. "And when they do, they'll find out what it means to fight for this world." He lifted his gaze to the heavens, to the light trails streaking faintly beyond the atmosphere. Not alien ships. Human ones. The first Ark vessels were turning home. Weeks later, deep space sensors captured the final signal from Earth. A short burst, repeating every 10 seconds. A single phrase carried endlessly across the stars. "Transmission complete. Earth stands."